I see you are here to watch a movie review of the latest Wachowski film, Jupiter Ascending. Eddie Redmayne's character in the film talks like this throughout the movie. It might annoy some people, and some people might question why he chose this respiratory problemed voice character to play in the movie. But now Tom Richardson will actually review the film, so the review does not have to happen with Eddie Redmayne's voice, as that would be a very annoying review.
So, hey guys, that was my attempted impression of what Eddie Redmayne did throughout the course of Jupiter Ascending. Something that unfortunately this actor has been picked on a lot. This film hasn't even been out for a complete week yet. And yeah, all across the board from critics and viewers and Wachowski fans alike, this poor actor is being picked on for using this very weird voice for the character he plays in the movie. But besides picking on Eddie Redmayne, Jupiter Ascending is the new film by the Wachowskis. The Wachowskis are known for directing the Matrix trilogy, Speed Racer. They were the producers of V for Vendetta. They also recently did Cloud Atlas, which is kind of a more of appreciated effort that didn't quite have a great execution the way people were hoping for, and I was definitely one of those people when Cloud Atlas came out. But Jupiter Ascending has been a project that both Lana and Andy Wachowski have been planning out for a while. This is something I think they actually ran into financial problems with it first, but recently they were finally able to make this movie and basically give it out to the world of what the story was that they were trying to tell earlier. But Jupiter Ascending is a story about a girl who is a part of a housemaid in service. She cleans toilets, she cleans houses, she takes care of who's ever kids that this housemaid in service is, taking care of if this family has kids that aren't in school yet. But one day she finds out that she possesses some type of royalty DNA strand that is very valuable. And in this universe that the movie takes place in, there's a queen of the universe that has this strange kind of DNA strand that nobody else has except for this Jupiter Jones girl back on Earth. And so basically, this queen sends out hunters and assassins and anybody that they can, including her brothers and this one other guy that wants to marry this Jupiter girl and this other guy that wants her dead. The other person that wants her dead is that Eddie Redmayne character I did an impression of earlier. So all these people get sent to Earth, and Jupiter is now in trouble. But Jupiter is luckily in good hands when a character played by Channing Tatum, and by the way, Jupiter Jones is played by Mila Kunis. I forgot to bring that up earlier. When Channing Tatum's character comes into play here, he is a half human, half wolf hybrid, and in space, there's some type of like military. I apologize if I don't know the specific details about what this character was in, but basically, there's some type of military service up in space, and they combine both humans with wolf DNA, and I guess that somehow benefits militaristic soldiers up in space somehow. But one of those characters is, or one of those soldiers from that team is assigned to Jupiter Jones's case, and protecting her from getting killed. And so throughout the course of the film, Jupiter is trying to figure out who exactly she is. Her parents didn't quite get enough details with her as far as who she is and where she came from, why she's significant in the universe, and why she's different from everybody else. And somehow, some way, she has this DNA strand that's pretty significant. And throughout the course of the film, she has to figure out why it's significant and why this could potentially um, kill off the Queen of the Universe, if so be, from the course of this events. So Jupiter Ascending, as you can tell by my plot synopsis here, it's a very messy movie. That's kind of the best way to describe it. It's just a kind of a big messy film that doesn't quite know what it wants to be. But there's definitely a lot of little snippets every once in a while, like, okay, well, it's probably about this and this and this, and well, it's just kind of a mess, and that's kind of too bad because this film really looked promising when the trailers came out. The Wachowskis are known for making really beautiful looking movies that sometimes don't always have the greatest scripts, unfortunately. But The Matrix was definitely something where it looked stylistically great and the script was good. Unfortunately, it seems like the Wachowskis are still on this bad trend lately where they're not really writing that great of scripts to go with these really good looking movies. So for my positives and negatives of Jupiter Ascending, my big first positive I have for it is this is a great looking production. It definitely has great visuals, great costume design, just a really good looking production. I can definitely see how the producers of this film were very happy with how it turned out, just because it does really look good as a set, looks good as costumes, looks good with the actors interacting with these environments and playing around with stuff in these environments. It does look good on that level. My other big positive is that Channing Tatum's character is very three dimensional. There's a lot of history behind him, and that's why during my synopsis I was kind of like, well, maybe there's these other things he talks about, and that's why I apologize, if I didn't know those details. That's just because his character is very well developed. There's a lot of history behind him. He does explain it in small bits throughout the film of who he is and why he was assigned to Jupiter, and just a really great three dimensional character. He has anti gravity boots in the movie that are really interesting to see him use for the action scenes. Just a very fun character, and I would think I would go so far as to say as far as roles go, I think this is the most fun role I've seen Channing Tatum in, even though exactly this isn't his best quite. This I wouldn't say this is his best film, but as far as performances go, I would definitely say this is probably one of the better Channing Tatum performances I've seen in quite a while. Mila Kunis's performance I thought was also very good. She's another one that's being kind of picked on a lot lately, but like, oh, she's a weakling, and oh, Channing Tatum always has to save her in all these scenes. I really think her performance is good, and to really be quite fair, she was in this house maintenance service for years, so of course she's not going to fight that well. Of course she doesn't know how to use a gun. Of course she doesn't know how to use a weapon. She's been cleaning toilets and or cleaning houses and taking care of kids all her life. Of course she doesn't know how to do that stuff. Of course that's why you know this Channing Tatum character and the Sean Bean character, who's also significant in the story, always had to save her from all this stuff. I mean, that was kind of her role. She was kind of figuring herself out, and I thought Mila Kunis did a great job portraying this character. Even this isn't the toughest character we've seen her play on screen. It was just a lot of fun to see her take on this role that I actually thought she did a pretty good job with. There are some very well filmed action scenes here. There definitely is a lot of moments where you can definitely tell the choreography was very well planned out. And just the Wachowskis know how to film action scenes. Their Matrix style of filmmaking is still present here when it came to the action scenes. These, Lana and Andy know how to film action scenes very well. Michael Giacchino, who is known for doing a lot of musical scores with J.J. Abrams, he did a really good musical score for this film. I was very impressed with what he did here. Definitely had that big summer blockbuster feeling to the score, and it definitely had that nice science fiction epic kind of feel to it. I really like how Giacchino was able to really get that feeling for his musical score. It's just a really good score he used for the movie. And playing off of that, I think this film has a great blockbuster vibe. This film, unfortunately, was going to come out in July of 2014 originally, but they needed more time for the visuals. That's why it came out in February 2015 instead. But I think the blockbuster vibe is still pretty present here. I could definitely tell that this was definitely going to be a big summer film if it kept its original release date. But I like that blockbuster vibe. I could definitely tell that the Wachowskis were, part of my pun, really reaching for the stars when it came to the story for this movie, but I really like that blockbuster vibe that they were using. I thought it was a lot of fun when it came to the scenes that were using that really cool vibe that they went with. For the negatives of the film, though, I thought the overall concept was pretty generic and unoriginal. This is definitely a script and definitely an idea that we've seen several times before. It felt like Star Wars mixed with The Matrix mixed with Chronicles of Riddick. It felt like all three of those things were kind of blended into one, and they just basically played off of those three stories. And that's really too bad because, not only is The Matrix from the Wachowskis, but there's so many other stories already that are trying to play off of Star Wars and play off of Chronicles of Riddick that it just doesn't feel like a very original concept. My other big negative of the film is that there's several plot conveniences. There's just so many times where um, the situations only happen according to the plot, and it's just really easy to get by with things, and they're easy to get through the conflicts and things like that. It's just a very messy film when it comes to the plot conveniences, just because everything's in service of the story. I also felt there was too much space and new character vocabulary that they were trying to go through. There's just a ton of scenes where they're trying to explain all this stuff, and it's so quickly, and there's just so much of it. But by the time that the film expects you to memorize and know all this stuff, you really don't know anymore. It's just like, okay, well, it was so blown at me at first that I just don't know what a so and so is and what this character is and what that's supposed to be and what that family's supposed to be. And it's just one of those kind of films where it's just like it's trying so hard to be Star Wars and Star Trek that we have to kind of put those things to the side just to memorize all this new vocabulary for this film, and it just becomes too overwhelming after a while. There's also too many villains in the film. I would go so far as to say as it's kind of hard to pinpoint who the main villain is in this movie just because there's three big main villain characters in this movie that basically had equal screen time and they kind of all hate Jupiter for a different reason. And it was kind of hard to follow who exactly was the main villain of the movie after a while just because all three of them had the same screen time. They all had a ton of screen time and a ton of time to get developed. It's like, okay, well, who is the villain here? I don't know who is who. And then I won't try to pick on this guy too much just because he is being picked on a lot on the internet right now. But Eddie Redmayne's character really is not that good in the movie. I don't like the voice he used. I don't like how whether the Wachowskis directed him this way or he chose to do this as an actor. The respiratory problemed voice really got annoying after a while, and I didn't like the character. The character is just really annoying, and they could have just handled this character completely differently. And because there's already two other big villainous characters already, they probably just could have gave more screen time to them instead. I really think his character really wasn't necessary for this movie. Then my last two complaints are there's some very forced romance in this movie. The relationship between Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis is very forced. I feel like they did that just because these two characters are with each other a lot in the movie. When Channing Tatum just serves as the bodyguard and Jupiter is the main character, I really feel like they're forcing the relationship. It really feels rushed and kind of last minute in a sense. So didn't care for the romance in this movie. It was very unconvincing. And then I also thought there was too many on and off characters. There's literally some characters in this film where we'll see them for a good 30 minutes, then we never see them again. And there's also some characters where we see them for a good 20 minutes, don't see them again for another hour. They get another 20 minutes of screen time, and then we never see them again. It's just kind of annoying how the Wachowskis turned on and turned off certain characters because at the end of the day, it's just like, well, not everything was wrapped up, and I'm not completely satisfied here. So Jupiter Ascending, it's an okay film. I would say I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's an okay film for like a Redbox rental someday. If all the other good ones are checked out already, and this film's on there for Redbox, it's an okay film. If you like the Wachowskis, if you like the Matrix trilogy, if you're interested in seeing what their current project was, maybe give this a Redbox rental. I definitely won't own this film. I don't plan on even seeing this film a second time. Like I said, it's probably an okay Redbox rental. But for those who are hoping for the next great science fiction epic like Star Wars, Jupiter Ascending unfortunately is not that movie. So if you like the Wachowskis, maybe give it a Redbox rental. If you don't like the Wachowskis or the Matrix, you can probably just skip this one. So 7.5 out of 10 for me. Jupiter Ascending is an okay film.